Greetings, Tuhon Son listeners. This is Ryan Stick Gelinas. Tuhon Philip Gelinas is in Japan right now, having the time of his life, and I am typing this. But Dad's over in Japan doing important work. He's bringing the Dog Brothers with Crafty Dark Mark Denny for the first time in Japan, and that's the first time. Isn't that incredible? That an official Dog Brothers gathering or something or other. I don't know. I'm not the person to ask about these things. Gatherings, seminars, they all blend in together. The same thing as things I can't do. Anyway, so, we recorded it. We're about to put it out, but then things got crazy, but now you get to hear it. So, without further ado, here it is. All right, everyone, welcome to Tuhon and Son. I'm Ryan Stick Gelinas.
And I'm Philip Tuhon Gelinas.
And this week, it's Dad he was in Vegas. He was just at the martial arts conference. Not martial arts conference, the Kajukenbo conference.
The KSDI, Kajukenbo Self-Defense Institute Annual Convention. Every year, around this time, we celebrate the birthday of Sijo Imperato with a big convention of all the Kajukenbo people that we know, the KSDI, the Kajukenbo Self-Defense Institute.
It's like Kajukenbo Christmas.
It's Kajukenbo Christmas in July. That's right.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so what we do is...
I want a quarter every time someone says that.
Anyway, so it used to do it in June, but June just seemed to be at the end of school year and people just didn't want to come. But going to Vegas seems to be a big deal for everybody all the time. I know it is for me. And we do it in July, and it's a couple of weekends, second weekend in July. Everything just seems to be better there. The thing about Vegas is that because people spend so much money there, the prices of everything, the basic stuff like staying in hotels and everything, can become pretty well controlled. But if you go to some nice place in downtown, you name your city, it'll probably be a lot more, at least twice as much. Yeah. And being as Vegas is kind of like an adult Disneyland, everybody likes to go there.
So what's your favorite part of Vegas?
Besides going home?
You don't really strike me as a gambler.
Well, I'm not actually. I have
taken a show.
I have actually gambled in the past, but not. I don't really gamble, i.e. I don't sort of sit there and think to myself, I will pay for my vacation with this next roll. I actually went the very first...
My kids are going to college.
Yeah, well, in 1974, it was actually funny. That's when I kind of learned not to do that. I went down with some friends of mine the first time. We were 21 years old, and we drove down through the United States right to Mexico, to Puerto Vallarta for a couple of weeks. But anyway, we passed through Las Vegas, and I didn't have any extra money, so I thought to myself, okay, I'm just going to go and look. And we went to Caesar's Palace and a couple of other places that were popular, and we had a $1.99 buffet dinner at one of these little places that used to be very popular around there. And then somebody said, oh, well, hey, I can't see you doing this. I'm going to lend you $5. So I took that $5, and I managed to get it up to $98. And I was like that milkmaid. I was planning, the houses I would buy because it just seemed so damn easy. And I eventually lost all that money plus $10 out of my own pocket. And I can tell you that $10, it was like I was cutting flesh away from my bone. It's very easy to spend somebody else's money, but my God, how hard it is to spend your own. So I was cured at that time. I had done it since one time I went down with my wife Ruth, and
I thought you were gonna say that your friends forgot you on the roof or something like that.
No, worse than that. I lost money.
And ended up waking in a hotel room with a professional boxer and a tiger.
Right, and a scar where my kidney used to be.
Yeah.
No, I'm not quite like that. I don't drink that much.
I'm sorry. You said you went down with Mom, right?
I went down with Mom one time.
Yeah.
She likes to put a couple of quarters in and pennies and nickels in the slot machines. I decided that I was going to spend a few hours in the tables. So I went to a blackjack table and I spent about 3 or 4 hours there. And it was funny because I'd given myself like $100 admission cost, which meant that's all I was going to spend. But I'd already, in my mind, lost it before I even got it. Because if you start thinking about money as, money you can get, because I know all the people who actually like to gamble out there are going, are they crazy? What's he thinking about? I don't gamble. I don't think about gambling. I don't dream about gambling. I don't gamble. So for me, it was like entering adult Disneyland, which means you pay this money, or you think of paying this money, even though you may not pay it. You sit there, and for the evening, you get to stare at all these really interesting types of people who come and gamble with you at the table. These women come around, the waitresses, and you give them a tip, but basically you get as many drinks as you want for free because, of course, they want you as inebriated as possible because, hey, then you'll spend more money. And all these things. So it was...
It's funny because it's true.
Smashing good time. Anyway, what happened was that around 3 or 4 in the morning, because that's when we decided we weren't going to gamble anymore, or we were going to back to our room and sleep, she came and said, okay, it's time to go. So I took up whatever was left of the money, my $100, I think it was about $65, and I put it all on one card. And she, of course, was freaking out because gamblers don't think of doing that. They actually think about, I've made 4 cents, I've made 16 cents. Anyway, what happened was that I lost it all. But, I'd already lost that money. I was never connected to that money to begin with. I took $100. I separated it from whatever money I had. And it was like, well, I don't think about when I go to Disneyland, I only got 4 rides. That was $25 a ride. That was a ripoff.
That's funny you say that because I do.
But the thing is, I feel that once you've paid the money to get in, you're not going to get any of it back. And Las Vegas are smart because they don't make you wait for any of these rides. They put you right at the table and put your money to work because they know that you aren't paying an admission. You are going to pay a constant admission every half hour. But that's my Las Vegas reasons for being there. It's really interesting. I mean, this past weekend, we were at the Riviera Hotel and Casino. And that's not on the upmarket part. It's not where the strip, whenever you see pictures of Disneyland. Whenever you see,
You're really freaking committed to this.
No, when you see pictures of Las Vegas, there's always a picture of the strip with the big hotels, Paris and New York, and all the other big ones. And
did you see any magical rats in your hotel?
Magical rats?
Is that
No.
why you keep saying?
No, I hope we don't have any kind of rats in our hotel room. But it's kind of a down market. You could tell that one of the things that we all noticed was that they don't give hair conditioner in this hotel. But everything is, it's not bad. But it was funny because there were the rooms that had been booked by the convention, and they had a lot of them. And we realized that we hadn't bought our rooms soon enough. So we went to the hotel directly. And it's funny because they've got this new charge that's called a resort charge. And they charge you $15 or $16 per day. But they don't include it in your room charge. They say it's a resort charge. Now, what a resort charge would be to me that they have a resort there. But they have a pool where you're able to buy drinks. And they have a small exercise room on one of the floors above the tower. And that's the resort, other than the fact that it's hot as hell most of the summer. And
Did
it's
you
fine.
use any of this?
Well, we used it to walk by.
Okay.
I mean, there were people. The pool is, the pool is not a bad thing. It's just a pool. It's kind of one of those hidden fees that hotels use to make sure that you pay more money than you think you're going to. Anyway, so what we were doing, there were a lot of people there. There was a 2-day event. We did seminars the first day. And I was able to teach a couple of seminars. It was kind of interesting. I do this other style of Cali called Pikiti Tercia. And it's well trained, it's popular, but it's not as popular as some. So you have to make your stuff more available. You actually have to go out and say, look, I'm interested in teaching this stuff so that people see what it is. Because most of the time, if you're not prepared to show what you know, you'll be the best unknown person in the world. And you don't really want to do that. You want to make your stuff better known because when it's better known, then you have more people practicing it in a wider base of activities, means you just got a higher group of people at the end. We've been doing this in Canada since about 81. And, so we've had some success as far as people practicing it is concerned. But it would be nice to see this material gets out there to more people.
So everyone out there, look at something called Pikiti Tercia Cali.
Yeah.
Is that how you say it?
Pikiti Tercia Cali. Yes.
All right, say it 3 times in a row really, really fast.
3 times in a row, really, really fast. 3 times in a row, no. Pikiti Tercia Cali. Pekiti Tercia Cali, Pekiti Tercia Cali.
Now click your heels together, and maybe
Click,
you'll
click, yes,
and
yes.
maybe you'll wind
I'll
up.
go
in
back to Kansas. That's
Bikini,
right.
yeah.
But it was a good time, and we brought some students down. We had Mitch. Mitch's birthday was that weekend, so he was in a celebratory sense.
Oh man,
Yeah, and
so he got left on the roof.
well, I think he built his own roof anyway. And he was down with his buddy Mark, and then Carlin was down, and so was Claudio. And Carlin and Claudio actually did really, really well. They it's kind of funny. There's a video out there of Carlin's fighting this guy Jason Makaloloy, and Jason is a really awesome fighter. But Carlin looks pretty good. But Carlin's never done this before. I think he sparred twice in our Muay Thai class. I mean, that's it. Maybe a bit of boxing training. He's been doodling around some JKD lately. But he did very, very well. I mean, that's the whole thing, that these guys did very well. They didn't get cowed by the experience. And so Carlin's, even though he lost the fight, did not lose the respect of the people that were fighting with him. And then that was really amazing. And then Claudio is asthmatic, and if you can imagine somebody who has asthma in a temperature, in a high temperature like Las Vegas, it was a pretty substantial thing. So he was trying his best. And the thing is, in Vegas, they still let you smoke in the hotels and the casinos. So even though you may think to yourself, well, hey, if they're only smoking whatever, it's just smoke permeates. And so he was in there, and he fought 2 rounds. I don't know how they thought those 2 rounds were even, but they had 2 rounds even, and so they had to fight a 3rd round. And Claudio fought like a tiger, and he won. But at the end of that fight, his asthma was kicked in so much, his lungs were aching. He could hardly breathe, and we had to withdraw from his fight for the 1st and 2nd place.
All right, so what is happening in Vegas? Vegas, sorry, just have to paint a picture for me. I wasn't sure if it was a conference where you all walk around and say, yo, what's up? So there's competition and fights there?
Yeah, well, it was a combination of a tournament.
On Kajukenbo Christmas?
Kajukenbo Christmas, yes. Well, what happened was on the first day, as I said, from about 8 o'clock in the morning till about 3 in the afternoon, we had seminars. And so we had all these people, all these high-ranking professors and others that would come down and show their stuff. People showing, they had some guys showing Silat. We had 2 or 3 Filipino martial arts groups. Myself, I think there was a group doing something called Kajukenbo Eskrima. And Kajukenbo Eskrima is an interesting variant on the theme. It's kind of like, take Kajukenbo, the traditional Kajukenbo hard style, and put a stick in the hand. I am not as completely sold on it yet, but there shows some signs of...
Kajukenbo Eskrima sounds like some sort of skin condition.
Well, that would be Kajukenbo eczema. That's different.
Yeah, I know.
Anyways,
I'm not knocking it. I just got to throw it.
There were people teaching kickboxing skills, and there were some people teaching forms, other people teaching just variants on Kajukenbo. I mean, the whole thing about Kajukenbo is that it's not like some styles where there's a homogeny between, there's kind of everything you see, all the forms are the same, all of this are the same. Kajukenbo is originally a style that was created as a self-defense style. So they didn't have any of these things. They didn't have forms. They didn't have anything else. And it was only afterwards that they added them. And then later on, they had people practicing this thing. And so what they had is 4 different groups of people practicing this stuff. And because you had 4 different groups of people practicing this stuff, you had all sorts of variety. So now, as we're getting back together again, instead of being separate and individual in our unique appreciation of this art, now we get together in this convention, and you can see people, for example, practicing a softer version. There's a Kajukenbo Tumpai, which is based on a combination of some of the softer fighting arts.
Kajukenbo Light.
Kajukenbo Light. No, it's not kind of light. Soft doesn't mean light. It just means not hard hitting. And then you have...
I know, I kid. I make the jokes. You say the facts, I say the funny.
Okay. But they also had Kajukenbo Chuanfa, which is the first blends of the soft Chinese styles with the hard style. And then they had the newer version of that called Wun Up Kendo. So these are the 4 primary versions. And even within those primary versions, there's a lot of different individual things, because I look at myself. I've been practicing Filipino martial arts for 31 of my training years, and it's permeated what I do. I mean, I cannot ignore the fact that stick and knife fighting and sword understanding will affect what you do. It can't. If it doesn't affect what you do, then you're not really doing it properly. Anyway, so we're doing seminars all that day. And also, one of the things I've been doing for quite a few years, for about 25 years, is something called the Kajukenbo family tree. Now, when I first learned it, I learned about the Kajukenbo family tree was from my old friend Leonard Andresi, and this was back in 77, 78.
Give the synopsis, though, because we did an entire episode about this that everyone really should listen to.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's called Kajukenbo Family Tree Origins. But for the listeners we can't be arrogant enough to assume someone has listened to every single episode. It's like Stan Lee says, every comic book you make could be someone's first comic book, so you can't just be like, well, remember the last issue? Of course you do.
But
just to get off topic, it's really amusing. As we record this, my girlfriend's dog, like we're closing the kitchen doors so the rest of the house doesn't make any noise. We let the dog in. The dog walks around for 3 seconds, then
wants to get out,
then stares at the door distractingly for 10 minutes. So I open up the door. Sure enough, and then she walks around the house. Now she's outside the door again and staring at us.
Trying to figure out, well, we must have food in here because there's no food out there.
Make up your mind, Cupcake. Pick a Kajukenbo style already.
Do you want the soft version or the hard food?
Kajukenbo sounds like metal. It's like, what? Do you like death metal? New school metal? Old school metal? Thrash metal?
Or Kajukenbo metal?
Deathcore metal? I'm like, oh God, that's so intimidating.
I want Kevlar metal. I don't want any of that stuff to affect me.
Yeah, I don't want... Oh God. When you say all these variations, it's like, how does everyone keep track of this kind of stuff?
Mostly they don't. But, I mean, it's like anything. If you have 5 people in your family, you know them intimately because you've known them intimately. But that's the thing about...
dog goes in, dog goes out.
But what's really interesting about the Kajukenbo family tree, it started off as a very small thing, and now it's grown to a very large thing. And what's nice about it is that people are starting to pay attention to it. They were paying attention to it before, but now the idea of it being right. Most people before used to go, well, you'll probably just change it. But I'm pretty ridiculous about it. I want to make sure that it is as accurate as possible. The only problem is accuracy is really a point of view. It's kind of like saying, your father should have done this. But of course, everybody, like his brothers probably think of one thing, and his parents think of it another way, and his children think of him another way. So even though we are trying to present a fairly unified face,
can you give a better example than that? Like, your brother, when he says, your father should have did this, give an example.
Well, okay, there are a lot of people who get their black belts in Kajukenbo.
Okay.
Now, sometimes people come to me and go, that person shouldn't be on there. And to which I go, why not? And they'll say,
death metal and we're grindcore.
No, it's not quite like that.
Okay.
It's because they came on to my girlfriend once, and so I kicked them out of the band. And that's the problem, because Kajukenbo or any ranking system is inexorably tied to the people teaching and the people being taught. So, for example, let's say I'm a guy and I want to make a school. I want to start teaching my art. But you've been teaching me for 20 years, but I realize that some of your stuff is, it's okay, but I want to do it on my own. I don't want to do it with you looking down my throat, looking over my shoulder and saying to me, no, that's not right, you should do it this way. So by and large, we as human beings kind of stay away from that kind of relationship. But if you're my teacher, you're going to want to be able to control me. Now, if I'm a normal human being, I'll say, okay, well, you should do this, and you should do this, and you shouldn't sleep with your students, and you shouldn't do this, and you should not steal their money, and you should, just like basic obvious things. But other times teachers will go, you must stand this way, you must use these words, you must do this block, you must kick this way. And a lot of people will, if you're in a style that's very regimented, that's fine. But if you're in another style, and for example, you want to learn this and you want to put it together with something else you've learned or maybe you were doing before, it's very, very difficult because people just get to the point where they go, no, you have to do it my way. And as a result of not doing it my way or doing it any other way whatsoever, people start thinking to themselves, well, I don't have to listen to this person. And so it becomes fractured, the relationship. And so the people come and say, no, I want to start my style and I don't want you there. And so the teacher goes, okay, well, if you don't want me there, then we're no longer a teacher-student relationship. And so they come to me and say, I want him off my tree. To which I reply, did you give him his black belt? And the guy goes, yes, as if somehow that's, of course, a given. And then I go, well, then you can't take him off your tree. You can't disown him. People don't get unblack belted. They don't get unborn. They don't get anything. We have to acknowledge that. So I've come up with a series of things to make sure that people, relationship-wise, understand where they are, and then after that can figure out how the thing goes. Most people sort of believe that our students are kind of like our property, and they're not. And it takes time. And I know that some of them may be listening to me going, that dastardly guy, I know I should be able to kick anybody off all the time. But it's like anything. If you say, this never happened, and then everybody else in the room goes, what do you mean that never happened? Of course it happened. We all saw it happen. And then you go, as you're frustrated with this lack of support, no, you don't understand. Wink, wink, wink. It never happened.
Yeah, that's how every Brazilian is going to feel about that soccer game in a year against Germany.
7-1. That never happened.
I only notice because of their sadness. That's all.
But anyway, it's interesting because you want to be there, but then there's the other side of it, because it's not just the teachers. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like it's somehow one-sided. There are people, and there are a lot of them, who at the beginning of this of my voyage, if you will, started, they said, okay, yeah, I'm a black belt under, and they would tell somebody's name. And so dutifully, at the beginning, you took everybody at their word. You take everybody at their word, because you can't imagine why anybody would ever want to lie about something like this. Oh, yeah, you got your black belt? Sure, great. And you write their name down. And then, I don't know, 2 or 3 years later, you're sitting there with your family tree, and that teacher involved comes along and looks at it and goes, who are these guys? I went, oh, aren't they your students? Well, he was a purple belt under me, but he never got his black belt. And this guy, I think he got up to maybe a brown belt.
So was it the teacher that was lying to you, or the student?
The student.
Dude,
well, yeah,
jerks.
but but sometimes teachers lie to you.
Just to specify, the family tree is not, in fact, a tree he brings to Vegas around in a pot. The family tree is a long list of names of black belts, their teachers, and the tree that interconnects them all.
Right. So if, for example, Emperado had a bunch of students who became black belts, they're listed, and then those students had black belts, or had students who became black belts, and they're listed, and then their students who had black belts were listed.
No,
but I mean, just the idea that's how it works. It's a downline. But it's just not a mother and a father having kids.
So the family tree in Kajukenbo, it's amazing. Like when you say family tree and the word family.
Yeah.
The word family, it's you dog. When you say the word family tree, the word family, like we talked about all the fact stuff on that other episode.
Here he's back. Now that he knows he can't come in, he wants to come in. He's a dotsy.
She's a dotsy.
Okay.
The family tree, when you say family, it's interesting how you said the words family tree, and you chose the words family tree. It's not just an expression, because what it sounds like in a martial art like that, it kind of is a family, because you have sons and daughters that sometimes people are embarrassed by and they want to disown, hence why they want it off. It's like one of our kids, well, one of them's a doctor and one of them's a lawyer, and we got that other one that lives in a van down by the river. Can you take his name off there? Sorry, no.
Well,
you gave birth to him, and that's official.
Yes, well, that's actually true. And so there's a bit of that, and there's also the student who wants to disown his record. Sometimes, I mean, unfortunately, like a lot of things, Kajukenbo has the bright side. I mean, we have people who have been feted and acknowledged worldwide, and you have those who have fallen between the cracks of humanity. Some of them were drug consumers, and some of them died under bad circumstances. And we used to have a cops and criminals thing in the old days. Kajukenbo was just filled with cops and some criminals. And so that's just the reality. I mean, that happens everywhere. I mean, and then you start realizing the cops and criminals, labels are not really accurate. They're just a society. I mean, for example, if you have a bunch of guys who think to themselves, yeah, we are the legitimate source of, fill in the blanks what you think you are, sometimes it's not necessarily as valid. For example, the way that Irish revolutionaries were portrayed until they managed to get their own country in the 1920s. They were just basically, those brigands, those, fill in negative names. The Irish people, before they managed to get their liberation, their independence from England, they were thought of as just, they're just trying to destroy
They only
us.
got their independence in 1920?
In the 20s, I don't know exactly when,
okay.
but in the 1920s, after the First World War.
Anything in 19s when it still happens baffles me.
Oh, okay.
I'm
fine.
just like, this should be...
We had Woodstock in 1969.
Yeah, I'm like, what?
Anyway, so everything is based on the point of view. The one other thing about the family tree, especially because Kajukenbo is a Hawaiian system, there's a word called ohana. Ohana means family in Hawaiian. And the idea of Hawaiian family, I mean, the Hawaiians are basically very folksy people. I mean, sure, they may like the hula dance and they may like playing ukuleles, but they are really very folksy. Their families are very, very important to them. A lot of Hawaiian families are very big. And so this ohana spreads out and encompasses many, many people. In fact, some Hawaiian families are less related by marriage or by family, but they seem to adopt people who are. And sometimes, in the old days, there's stories about, various people who were in the original style. For example, the very first school of Kajukenbo, the guy came to Emperado and said, hey, it was Marino Tiwanak. He went to Emperado and said, hey, I need help.
Pronounce his name a little clearer.
Marino Tiwanak. And Marino Tiwanak went to Adriano Emperado and said, hey, I need help. And so Emperado said, okay. And he got everybody at the school they had at the Palama settlement and lined them up. And he basically went, you, and you to the various people. I'm only not saying their names because I don't know exactly all of them. And I don't want to insult anybody by making them think that I know all of them and I don't know all of them and I've left any of them out. So they'll remain the nameless you, and you. Anyway, those guys went off and they helped Marino Tiwanak open his first school. Well, subsequently, of course, Marino Tiwanak decided that he was his own man, which is fine because that's exactly what, you don't expect to live in your father's house forever. And so he created his own style called CHA3 Kempo. And so those guys became disconnected from Kajukenbo for the most part. Even though we kind of practiced the same thing, it was different. So therefore, they're not the same.
So even in the beginning, there was these different...
A different crowd, yeah. That's why, in my mind, a recording of the family tree is really important to me. It's important to me because my teacher arrived in Montreal in the middle to late 60s, and his name was Alexander Polentin. And quite honestly, even though he was able to say different names, he was an awesome martial artist. I mean, I've got him on videotape. This guy moved like liquid fire. I mean, people will know why, I actually use that word in conjunction with Grandmaster Alan Abad. But the reason he did is because he reminded me so much of my teacher. They had that same kind of quality of movement. They were kind of slight men. When I say slight, under 150 pounds. But they moved so fluidly and they had flexibility and just the way they moved, it was kind of like, liquid fire. Anyway, he arrived in Montreal.
As a groovy non-liquid fire, man.
Yes, okay, well, anyway, so he arrived in Montreal and quite honestly, he said, oh yeah, Kajukenbo guy. And, later on, even though we were associated with Emperado, there were some problems because we had a hard time finding out who his connection was to Kajukenbo. Because, as I said, if you studied with the first guys, like there's Alejo Reyes was one of the top guys, and he had a bunch of students who became rather well known. And then you had Tony Ramos, another one of the guys came over, and their students became very well known. And then there became Joe Halbuna, and their guys became well known. And then there's a lot of others. Sid Asuncion came out, and a lot of his guys are very well known. So if you can't really trace your way back directly to these people, it becomes very difficult because you can say, yeah, I'm a Kajukenbo guy, and then everybody looks at you and goes, from who? Because, so I'm a cousin of yours? How does that work? And so that's the thing about having a family tree. So establishing that.
Can anyone ever prove their skill by actually demonstrating it? Or
well, I suppose you could, but you see, the problem is that we have in martial arts in general, not in Kajukenbo specifically. Sometimes somebody is very good. Like Bruce Lee was very good. he practiced originally Wing Chun, and he also practiced northern kicking styles called Tam Tui, and he practiced supposedly Tai Chi, and from his brother Robert he got fencing, and he also tried boxing, and when he came to North America, he learned judo from Hayward Nishioka, and he learned jiu-jitsu from Wally J, and he learned wrestling from Gene LaBelle, and he had all these guys that were inputting information. So when he came up with his Jeet Kune Do circa maybe 67, 68, he had this whole new style that was evolving past where his previous limitations were.
He sounds like this great kind of soup, full of all this amazing ingredients.
Well, yeah, but the problem was that, if he'd wanted to, he could have associated himself with any school. And everybody would have gone, oh, wow, because, as soon as you mention the name Bruce Lee, flowers bloom.
But something, just a little offshoot here. You were mentioning once that you got, quote unquote, kicked out of Kajukenbo because you were doing another style. Bruce Lee must have gotten in tons of crap from all these people because he was doing this years prior.
Well, I know.
So when he would travel doing our style or something, they must have.
Well, did you remember? I mean, if you recall, when we were interviewing Guru Inosanto.
Oh yeah.
It was funny because he was saying that the Wing Chun people that they knew were saying Bruce Lee wasn't very good in Wing Chun. And he said...
he didn't mention that.
No. But they were saying that but they were using a rather peculiar sense of logic. They were saying Bruce Lee wasn't good in Wing Chun. Well, how? And then people would ask, well, why? He said, well, he could never get to the second or third movement. But the reason he never got to the second or third movement is because he destroyed people with the first one. So it was like saying... Hey, you never used a second shot. I know, but I always killed somebody with the first one. Yeah, but that must mean you're not very good because you never had a second shot. So it's like, well, huh? So anyway, as far as Bruce Lee was concerned, he was so highly thought of that people just wanted to associate with him. Just the idea of being able to associate with him was enough for a lot of people. So that became the reality of an awful lot of martial arts nowadays.
All right, but before he got famous, I'm sure some people are just like, hey, wait a second, you're my student. Why are you learning that?
Well, no, at the beginning, when he went around, when he was officially a Wing Chun student under Yip Man, or in Yip Man's organization, when he came to North America, he started teaching it. He may not have had the right to do so. There's actually a big thing in a lot of the biopics. They show a guy whose name I don't have any legal position. So there's a Chinese guy who supposedly was sent to teach him a lesson. And if he taught him a lesson, he'd have to stop teaching. And this guy was a pretty well-known guy. And he lost to Bruce Lee. Even though to this day, they all say, no, that never happened. But the reality is that by being able to defeat this man, he made it possible for himself to continue on and teach people.
This is like a dramatization.
Yeah, it's about dramatization.
Okay.
They actually say that it's this guy kicked Bruce Lee. Even though Bruce Lee beat him, this guy kicked Bruce Lee in the back and hurt him, and actually Bruce Lee...
And there's Dad Santos specified the real reason in the interview. So you're going to have to listen to that interview if you want to find out the real reason why Bruce Lee broke his back.
Or hurt his back.
Hurt his back.
Anyway, but that gets around to this. So what happens is that if I'm a really great martial artist and I decide I'd like to work out with you, and then after a while you go, wow, gosh, you're awesome. And so you claim that I'm going to be a teacher. I mean, one of the things that happened recently was that there was a guy who started putting out on the internet a particular variation on Kajukenbo that he was teaching. And he really started pushing himself. So people responded to that. They'd see his YouTube stuff and they'd say, hey, come over to my place and do a seminar. So he would go to those places and do seminars, and he would meet other Kajukenbo black belts, and they would think, wow, yeah, no, Joe Blow, you're really good. He said, okay. So last year when I met him, he gave me his update of Family Tree. Well, this year, a few days ago, some of the people who he put on there were at the seminar and convention. And they went, why is my name and the name of two of my students and my teacher on this list? And I said, well, because this guy who will remain nameless gave me your name and said that you were a student of his, a black belt. And her reply was, no, I'm not a student of his. I am a student of this guy over here. And I should be under him if I'm under anybody. And I felt kind of awkward because it was like, I had done that, but see, that's the thing.
Is that one of those types where, you say, no, once it's on there, but in a special circumstance like that, would you move it?
Well, yeah, of course, because it doesn't, the idea is not to remove them from the list, but to position them properly under the teacher that they acknowledge as their teacher.
Okay.
Because that was the thing. It's like, I didn't know who the person's teacher was. If you come to me and say, I'm a black belt, I go, okay. And you say, well, I learned under this guy. I can't take your word from it because you are, as a black belt in Kajukenbo, I can take your students' names because you promoted them, but I can't take you saying you're under such and such a teacher because that has to be proven or established by the teacher, or if the teacher has passed away, by an overwhelming amount of information in that regard.
People even claiming that they're students of people, or like they were a black belt of somebody, and they kind of like, maybe they just took a class or something, and on paper they could say, I train with this person. Well, it's like me saying, like, when I was about 14 years old, Frank Marino, we were at his house and he showed me how to play a guitar chord. Do I tell people I got guitar lessons from Frank Marino?
No, say you were in the band.
Yeah, exactly.
I tried out for Frank's band once.
Yeah, he taught me how to play a chord I can't remember how to do.
Or no, how about, I tried him out for my band, but he wasn't good enough. Anyway, but
you could say anything on paper. It's like with all these technicalities.
Well, that's it. Like that. And so a lot of times, when you're talking about, we were talking
it's
about...
It's like I played on that record. You see a guy standing on a vinyl playing a guitar.
Well, yeah. Well, it's like I was on that Genesis record. On the liner notes.
I was sitting on him.
No, I was in a picture.
You're in a picture?
On a picture on
the
liner
Genesis record?
Genesis, yeah, the record Genesis Seconds Out. It was there was a crew shot taken outside the Winterland in San Francisco, and I'm in there, standing in there with my hands in my pocket with the crew. We were there, and we were on that Genesis tour in '77, and they released it as Seconds Out a couple of years later. It was kind of neat. But, I can say I was on that album, but I wasn't really physically on the album, unless I was screaming, paint it black, you devil. Anyway. Yeah. So, but that's the thing. Okay, now getting back to the Kajukenbo thing, that is the problem, because you want to do it. But by and large, when I explain to people my philosophy, they see that there's a certain amount of logic. Of course, most people don't see logic when they don't want to, but for the most part, I've been able to convey what I do. And more importantly, I've been able to show people that I'm serious about it, that I'm not just making it up. It's not just, oh, well, Philip will do it the other way if I force him to. And I suppose there's that sense of that always going to happen no matter where you are. But I've been able to develop a certain credibility, and that's been great, because now when people come, they're interested in putting the names on. They know that I'll do a job that is at least going to respect that part. And, like anything, even though I have some hard and fast rules, there's no rule that is so hard nor so fast that it cannot be abridged when necessary. Yeah. But it has to be, but I'm not going to just say, okay, all that stuff, that's now purple. Now that stuff, it's not a casual thing. It's something that has to be done. We had somebody added this year that his teacher had not been added, even though what I did, though, was I was able to amass a certain amount of anecdotal and factual information. People who studied with him, who were there when he took his black belt test, wrote to me and established, yes, they were willing to say these things. And so I have all of their names and I have all of this. And so eventually I was able to create enough factually based anecdotal evidence to say, yes, this person was trained under that person.
So now you have to be all Sherlock Holmes about it. And...
Well, if there is no definitive thing, if I'm your father, so if you go down and tell people that you're my son, of course it's going to be true.
We have the same tired looking eyes.
Anyway, so the martial arts is very similar to that. So you have these people who control things, and so people will claim martial arts connections to families. They'll say, yes, I am the long lost, I'd hear stories from people saying, oh yeah, I trained in the old days in the Palama settlement. And you go, they didn't have kids classes in the Palama settlement in those days. Yeah. What are you talking about? So you hear these stories.
What's an example of the biggest crock you've ever heard?
I couldn't say that, because there's a lot of people whose friendship I maintain, who maintain those crocs as like that's their history. Okay. So I've learned, what is called...
there's a time and a place.
There's a time and a place. this is...
You know who you are. You should think about it.
So the reality, though, is that there's 1,000 things about training. So what we have to do is very, very carefully, I'll accept, for example, Aleo Reyes was highly organized. He was one of the most organized guys. And so he had all of his guys who he ever promoted to black belt were on a list. Then his son, who's in charge of their school, and all the other people who he trained have their lists. But second or third generation, this one guy was further out in the middle of nowhere, and his stuff was, how can I say this? His stuff was good, but not spectacular. But he had a lot of people who subsequently claimed to have been promoted by him. And so what happened is a lot of these guys, see that what happened to Emperado did, people would either break away from their teachers. For example, if I'm an 18-year-old and you're a 21-year-old, if I'm starting when I was like 16 and you're 19, that seems like an enormous difference. To a 16-year-old and 19-year-old is really old. To a 20-year-old, a 24-year-old isn't so old anymore.
That's what I tell the ladies.
And to a 30-year-old...
Come on, date me. I'm 20 or 24. It's no longer weird.
Anyway.
Come to Butthead.
Okay, but the idea, though, that when I'm running, like if you're the captain of a team or whatever, or you're the coach of a team and you're a young guy. I mean, I remember when I was in Boy Scout camp, we were all like 12 or 13. Well, the counselors at this Boy Scout camp, because it was not people who wanted a regular job, it was just like they were like 16 or 17 years old. There was also a couple of years difference. But they were able to, one of the big things about going to Boy Scout camp is earning merit badges. So, okay, we're going to do the canoeing merit badge. So you go out. 2 hours later, you have this merit badge. Now, the fact that when we brought back all this crap to our scoutmaster, he went, that doesn't work. That's nothing. All of those merit badges are worth nothing. Because, you see these people in Boy Scout camp, and they have bandoliers with every merit badge known to mankind. And you'd wonder, how on earth would they ever get it? Because our scoutmaster used to make us do, done in triplicate, verified, by everything. But these guys would go off to scout camp and they would come back.
Everybody's a winner.
Yeah.
Here's a merit badge. Well, you didn't build it all the way there, but you built some of it. So we're going to give you a little something to go home with.
Well, hey, I didn't know. I didn't see you there. But yeah,
we're going to give you a little something to go home with so your mother doesn't feel weird about giving me hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, well.
All right, so anyway, Anastasia, wrapping that point up, it was
just mean
people can come out of the woodwork, claim something, and it doesn't mean it exists.
Exactly.
People could say anything if there's no legal ties.
Well, you were talking before about Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee had a lot of people who claimed to have studied. I mean, there was a guy in Montreal who claimed to have studied with Bruce Lee, but he didn't claim to study with Bruce Lee to try to set up JKD seminars, but he did have a JKD school in his karate uniform, and there were a lot of those kinds of people. As soon as somebody dies, there's that sense of, well, I can make some money before they find out. And that problem exists everywhere, all the time, no matter what. Well, as I said, there are always going to be somebody. Okay, everybody in the United States has heard of the Congressional Medal of Honor.
We've covered that already.
Okay, yeah, but I'm just saying that there's a guy a little while ago who claimed to have two of them. You can't have two of them. Now, it's not like there hasn't been people in the past who have won the medal twice.
No, but they don't give it twice.
They don't give it twice anymore. But there was a guy who claimed it, and people believed him until he was found out. But until he was found out, they were going, wow, this guy is awesome. He was the most highly decorated guy. He won the Congressional Medal of Honor twice. But no, he didn't. But he also claimed to be a Navy SEAL, which he wasn't. He also claimed an awful lot of things, which he wasn't. And everybody goes, oh, well, no, how did people fall for that?
Well, because he said it, you read it, and then you believed it.
Yeah, exactly. Who would have the audacity to claim that?
All right, well, Dad, I just want to say right now, I'm 87 years old. I come from Krypton, and I can fly.
Cal?
It's been recorded. It's part of history now. So you can believe it if you want to. No, I'll write it down. That'll make it true.
Well, yeah. See that you have exactly things. So because of I've been doing the family tree for 25 years. I've met a lot of people. I've met most of the people who practice Kajukenbo around the world. When I say I've met them or somebody they know, and invariably, there aren't that many people who fudge the truth. And even then, fudging the truth, I've learned that is not, for example, if you and I have a problem and I decide no longer to acknowledge you as my son, Now everybody's going to say, no, Ryan, you're Philip's son. I said, but all I have to do is create enough. Oh, no. His mother wasn't with me. So that's the type of nonsense. So, and people say, yeah, but there's DNA. You can put that kind of stuff off for long enough so that you can create reasonable doubt. And that's the thing about it.
Cherry. You are the father. No, it's more of a Morey thing.
Yeah, exactly.
A Morey thing. All right, so you and Mom were in Vegas this time around. It was a good time.
Yeah, it was that, so that, and, she got to spend a bit of money at the slot machines. She does pennies, so, even if she has a horrible day, it's like $2.
Mom ever win big?
I don't know. I never got any of it if she did.
All right, so you're interviewed.
Yeah, she won big. She married me.
So you were interviewed this time around for a video. Talk about that video. What is that?
Okay, well, there's a movie, video, actually a documentary called The Bladed Hand.
The Bladed Hand. Okay.
Yes. There's a gentleman by the name of Jay Ignacio. Jay Ignacio started doing investigation. In fact, a friend of his, whose name I conveniently have forgotten, had gone to Russia to start teaching Russians Filipino martial arts, and so he was trying to record that because it seemed like an interesting thing. And then what happened is that things changed, and you couldn't always do everything you expected to do, and so he started realizing that the subject matter was so much bigger than what he was doing. And so because it was so much bigger than that, he was able to start investigating much wider levels. And so he started going to all sorts of Filipino teachers and asking them, okay, so what is your story? And there are all these stories about Filipino martial arts that were quite amazing. So now to the point where the first one was so successful, the Bladed Hand 1 has been shown at a number of movie festivals across the world. And now they're in the process of putting together Bladed Hand 2. Basically, because there were so many people that they didn't get to cover the first time around, they wanted to be able to cover them this time. And I was included.
Awesome. And who interviewed you?
The person who interviewed me was a gentleman by the name of Sonny Sison. He practices the Filipino martial arts and Kajukenbo, variation of Kajukenbo. He practices one of the Kendo variations. That's where I met him originally many years ago in Portland, Oregon. And anyway, he was at that time a stuntman doing Power Ranger stuff, which of course made you get all excited.
Yeah.
You're a Power Ranger?
I might have his autograph somewhere, to be honest.
Possibly, but anyway,
yeah.
It's funny because when I was recounting a story online about how in the old days I used to go around Los Angeles when I was in Los Angeles training with Guru Inosanto. I would go around, I'd look around for toys at all the Toys R Us. And then Sonny wrote to me going, Philip, you should let me know. I could have got you anything. And I was like, well, mind you, had it been that easy, I probably would not have. I mean, the relationship I developed with Ryan afterwards was like, hey, I've really worked hard at getting this stupid toy. Yeah. I hope you appreciate it.
20 plus years of severe guilt.
No guilt whatsoever. But that's, so Sonny and I, we see each other quite a bit. Actually, the last time I was in San Diego, he was very nice and came out to a seminar I did. It was awesome. It was, he brought some guys. When Sonny likes some stuff you do, it actually kind of is one of those guys that brings credibility to it. When you're a stuntman, it conveys a certain understanding, like, yes, I do it for real. And not only do I do it for real, I have to make it look like I do it for real. In fact, I'm so good, I have to fake it because real would really hurt somebody.
Oh, just to specify, if anyone wants to see one of Sonny's stunts in particular, I believe if you watch Power Rangers, the movie, and the White Ranger does this crazy like spin, on wire work, but this spin jump or spin down and this jump kick, but multiple jump kicks, sliding sideways. I believe, that's Sonny doing all that stuff.
Right. Okay. Anyway, so we did family tree stuff and we did seminar stuff at the seminar, and we sort of walked around. We didn't walk around very much. We walked over to what's it called? We walked over to Circus, which was across the street. So anybody who's familiar with that part of Las Vegas knows how down market it is. Anyway, nowadays, the big thing in Vegas is everybody wants to get you to do a timeshare. They want to get you to go in to do timeshare, which was kind of amusing. We went and did that because we were going to get free food. So we did that, and they were trying to figure out why we didn't want to buy their timeshare because it's not valid. It's not worth it. But hey, far be it from me to say these things. Anyway.
So you sat through a timeshare?
I sat through a timeshare.
And they actually gave you stuff, though?
And they gave me stuff. So we went.
What stuff did you get?
We got free tickets to a show.
Okay.
We got free drinks. We got $40 gift certificate for food at one of the hotel's restaurants. So we got all the free stuff, and I mean, it wasn't spectacular free stuff, but it was better than nothing.
And you had to, how long was the timeshare? Like 2 hours? Because I saw the South Park one where every time they're like, oh, you can leave anytime you want. They open up the door, and then they're in the same room.
You know something? That's very close. South Park is so good for the sad fact that it's there. They say, oh, it's about 90 minutes before we let you start thinking about leaving. And,
So you got to go to a show. What show was it?
It was a Motown show.
Oh, so Mom must have been happy.
Yeah, she liked it. Yeah. And there was we went to a comedy show. I thought the first part was really funny. And the second one, I don't know if it was funny or not because I fell asleep.
Oh, that's insulting.
Not for me. I was wiped out. It was the day before we left, and it was just like I was gone. I was ready to. I must admit, there was a liquor store nearby, and they had this Polish vodka that I bought a bottle of.
So you cash in that 2 times a year you drink.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I had a drink, but I didn't even have that much to drink. But it was great because we managed to buy a couple of bottles of booze for under $30 total. And I mean, there was a huge bottle of rum and a huge bottle of vodka.
And where are they?
They're gone.
Where?
Well, they're not finished. We didn't drink them all. We just couldn't bring them back with us.
Yeah, I got you.
Once you've opened those things, they're kind of untransportable.
Yeah, exactly. Why are our suitcases covered in liquor?
Yeah, why does it smell like booze?
Yeah.
But Vegas was great. Vegas was great because last year there wasn't as many people. This year there were many more people. I suspect that people are starting to realize that it's a definite, value. Also, people are interested in maintaining their connection with Kajukenbo, and I'm very happy to see that.
Awesome. So what was the best part of Vegas this time around?
Just that, it's kind of entered almost, how can I say this? It's entered almost I've been there, done that type of thing.
Okay. Well, let's rewind. Like, what was your favorite experience in Vegas, like, ever? Like, the one that stands out, you're just like, oh, man, guys, one time this thing happened, it was awesome.
Well, actually, my brother used to work for Cirque du Soleil a long time ago.
Okay.
And he got us tickets to see Ka, which is one of those shows, and it was quite amazing. It was
in Vegas, right?
In Vegas, yeah. The only thing that was kind of scary was you don't realize how hard it is to get around Vegas when everybody wants to do the same thing at the same time.
Okay.
So I don't remember the name of the hotel it was at, but within a mile and a half, you were kind of like having to find these back roads because all of the major roads were jam-packed with all the other people who wanted to go to the same show, because this isn't like 1,000-seater. This is like 2,500 seats, 5,000 seats. They have these theaters built to maximize the
in the hotels. It's incredible. Yeah. Like when you see, it's like Elvis Presley played a hotel, and in my mind, I'm like, thinking of one of those sad hotel bands, and I'm like, no, man. Well, that thing's big as the Forum. It's like, it's
exactly. The Garden Arena, whatever it is, the MGM. I mean, Rolling Stones play there.
Yeah.
And I say that simply to date myself, but U2 played there.
Yeah, but it's funny. It's like when you say, it's like, oh, they only play Vegas now. It sounds so dated, but no, man, it's just, that's where people who have been drinking for almost nothing all night want to go after they lose some money. They're like, I want to see Poison.
Well, never mind that, but Celine Dion. I mean, when you consider the fact that she literally spent a year there because she was able to make a lot of money playing to her fans who were able to stay in hotels nearby and either walk over or taxi over to the hotel where she was staying at. And, just imagine being able to play a show that you're really able to hone to its best way, and you're able to have your family and kids there every day. And so you go, hey, you can really...
No tour bus traveling, all that.
Exactly. And people go, like, that seems to be interesting, but that really loses a lot of energy very quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, you've toured Japan in a van. How much fun was that?
No, it's amazing. Japan's incredible.
Well, yeah, Japan was incredible, but that's because it was Japan. But could you imagine if you'd done that in Northern Ontario?
I guess I was just so distracted by the wonders around me.
Yeah, well.
Anything horribly wrong happened to you in Vegas?
No, not anymore.
Not anymore, okay. But all the stuff that did go wrong, you don't want to mention?
Well, it's just that things get picked up out of it. Years ago, when I first went, I was just 21. I looked a lot different than I do now. We were at Caesar's Palace, and that actually, what you just said, brought it to mind. I was playing, blackjack or whatever, those things, and then a drink appeared at my my arm, and I was going, I didn't order this drink. And some older man across the bar, I guess he was trolling for somebody, had this thing sent over. And it was sort of like that kind of queasy feeling of like, okay, you can't sort of stand up and go, fuck you, because you're not going to say that. But at the same time, you're trying to figure out a way of saying, look, that's very kind of you to want to buy me a drink, but I really don't want to sleep with you and I don't want the drink. So how about that? But it's just very difficult to establish that because, these guys all look like, guys from New Jersey. They're well-dressed, but they're well-dressed Eastern thugs.
Oh, okay. I thought it was a guy who looked like the Colonel from Kentucky Fried Chicken.
No.
Hello, boy. You got pretty hair.
Yeah.
Would you like to enter human trafficking? Sorry, the Colonel apparently sounds like Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
Philip Gelinas went down to Vegas to have a nice time. Things did not go as planned. I've never been to Vegas, but I'm cheap, so it's not adult Disneyland for me. It's, I don't know.
Well, no, because...
Unless that's a talking magical mouse, I don't give a All right, Dad, so I'm glad you're back in one piece. Didn't get all Clark Griswold in Vegas and stuff like that, or even worse, Elvis Presley to the end of his career, and Mom didn't find you dead on a toilet. Yeah. It's like Dad was in Vegas for a week, and now he's shooting the television. That was another episode of Tuhon and Son, a little bit, we threw a little bit of history in there. We got a little bit of Las Vegas insights and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. The thing about doing this show each and every week is that there's so many stories to tell, and it's hard to stay on one specific subject because it's like you, like me, I'm a tangent master. Somehow talking about pouring tea into a kettle can eventually add to I want to interview that Power Ranger stuntman guy at some point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, no, it's...
Well, Sonny interviewed you, so I think, therefore, we're entitled to interview Sonny.
Well, he was very into it, by the way.
And then I hope he's ready for the amount of dorkisms that I'm going to dispel upon. Okay, and then when you did this jump kick in episode 76, did you... Yeah, it's gonna be, Dad, you're gonna be ashamed of me.
I'm never gonna be ashamed of you, Ryan.
Well, if you haven't been ashamed yet, then...
I can imagine maybe cringing.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Well, he can't see you cringing because it's going to be like a Skype audio call.
What do you do? I'm doing Kajukenbo.
Yeah. No, it's going to be cool. We're branching out in Tuhon and Son. We're going to get people from like around the world that aren't necessarily in front of us. It's going to be a little interesting, not looking into the eye of the man I'm talking to, but I think it's kind of cool. We're going to get this program. We're going to be able to record Skype calls, and we're going to be able to talk to even more people. In fact, if any listeners out there, if you have any questions or any submissions or anything like that, we have that Facebook page. It's Tuhon and Son on Facebook. You look that up, you write down a question, we're going to talk about it, man. Because even though Dad and I have known each other for 30 years, I feel that we've already run out of to say.
Not really.
No, I know.
No, I think we've just gone through that first tank of gas.
Yeah.
And now we have to realize, okay, we have to go to certain special gas stations to fill up again.
Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful metaphor because I have tons of gas. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to Tuhon and Son once again. I am Ryan Stick Gelinas.
And I'm Philip Tuhon Gelinas.
And you just sat in our kitchen with us. All right, bye.